Hello and welcome to Build Your SaaS. This is the behind the scenes story of building a web app in 2020. I'm Justin Jackson and John's not here. And today we've got Ward Sandler, like Adam Sandler, from Memberspace. How's it going, Ward?
Hey Justin, I'm good.
I've known you for a little while. We met at MicroConf originally, I think.
Yeah, a few years ago.
I think it was actually more than a few years ago. I think we first met 5 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, I'll go with your memory on that one. That sounds right.
Has that much time passed? So let's see here, because I remember I just published Marketing for Developers, and that was 2015, I think. Mm-hmm. And now it's 2020, right?
Yeah. I remember my partner actually bought that book. He liked it a lot.
So how long have you been doing Memberspace then?
Since 2015. So yeah, it's all about that year apparently.
Wow. Okay, so that's right when you started it.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, you started it as a way of adding like paid memberships to Squarespace.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you've evolved it since then, right? Now you do other, not just Squarespace.
Yeah. Now it's available on any CMS, Wix, Webflow, WordPress, all anything like that.
And like us, you also have a co-founder, right? Mm-hmm. It's just two of you?
Yeah, me and my co-founder Ryan. We have a minor partner Roger, and then we have two full-time employees outside of that, and then a bunch of contractors.
Yeah, so I think like today, I mean, we can also do a typical build your SaaS, like, you know, what are you working on? What are you thinking about? What are you struggling with? But I also just have questions, and we have a lot of listeners that I think could benefit from another viewpoint other than mine and John's. And one of the questions we get all the time is, how do you find a co-founder? So how did you guys find each other?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, we definitely didn't find each other to start a business. That's for sure. We went to college or university together. We went to Stevens Institute of Technology, which most people haven't heard of, but it's a small engineering college in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were actually in the same fraternity together, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Can you just quick sidebar?
Yeah.
Because fraternities are not a thing here in Canada. What is it? Is it just like a club? Is it like what? What's the deal with fraternities?
Yeah, so at Stevens, where we went to college, it was mostly men. It was so, you know, as with most STEM type stuff, it skews towards men, at least back then, which was, you know, we're talking about 2004.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it was mostly guys, and so the way that you have a party is you go to fraternities. That's just where the parties were. It was just groups of guys. It's kind of like a social club is a way to think of it. It's a social club that has silly rituals, if you want to call it that, that you do to get in. Nothing weird. Like the movies and television, it wildly exaggerates what it's like. It's not super weird like that. It's just it's
all
drinking.
Of us Canadians are over on this side going, "What the heck is going on?"
Yeah, no, it's just drinking, hanging out, camaraderie. You know, having just a group of people that you're friendly with. Like it's a way to like essentially create a giant group of friends very quickly, because like suddenly you have like 30 people that are like close friends and will like almost do anything for you to help you with school. Like a lot of it was studying together, even like, you know, it doesn't need to be parties. And it was actually really nice. You just kind of get this nice boost of a lot of friendship. You're the center of social activity, at least at our college. And then afterward, you have this nice alumni network. So yeah, I liked every part of it.
and that allowed you to meet Ryan.
Yeah. He was a year older than me, and yeah, he was already there, and we just kind of were friends. We weren't friends at first, but after hanging out for a little while, we became friends, and then we eventually worked at the same startup together.
Okay.
It was called TaxStream, and we sold. It sounds boring as hell, but it was tax software, like enterprise tax software, which sounds so boring, but it was actually really fun. Just the people that were there was like the coolest group of people. Everybody was just super chill, which you wouldn't have expected. And just young and energetic, and it was great.
Yeah, I mean that the group you're with actually kind of determines everything. And so you folks started working there right after college together?
Yeah, like I actually started there as like an intern during college, and Ryan started as an intern there even before that. He was like one of like the first like 20 or 30 employees. So he had like some equity, even like private equity. Yeah.
So do you think working together before you partnered up was helpful?
In a way. I mean, it was weird. Like we both did the same thing. We were sales. So we didn't you don't really work together in sales too much. You're kind of doing you're kind of in your own lane, going on your own hunts, if you will.
I didn't realize you guys were sales people.
Yeah.
That's your background's in sales.
Yeah. Both of us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This changes because I mean, the dynamic that John and I have is kind of the one that everyone's looking for, right? It's like a mostly technical person and then a non-technical person that can do all the other stuff. But you two, neither of you had a tech background, or you were tech plus sales?
So yeah, we both didn't have any technical background. Ryan is definitely more of a natural engineer, though. He started actually doing mechanical engineering in college and then switched to business, but he definitely has an engineer's mind. So
okay. So now the next part is I remember you folks were an agency first before you started MemberSpace. So like after that startup, you and Ryan went on your own, or?
Yeah. So like that startup got acquired by a giant company called Thomson Reuters. So they bought us.
Okay.
And then things got not fun anymore. Everything got super lame, and exactly what you'd imagine would happen when a big company buys you.
Yeah.
Now, the one caveat here is we were paid well. That was the nice part. Because if you sell expensive software to large companies, you make good commissions. And I'm not saying that to humble brag. I'm saying that because it's actually important in the story, because it essentially gave us funding to go do the next thing without having to be stressed about making a bunch of money or how are we going to pay rent. Yeah.
Yeah. That is key, isn't it? All right. So you had enough money, like you guys quit your jobs together and then you started working on this thing, or you were working on this thing while you were working full time?
Yeah. So when we were acquired by Thomson Reuters, and then me and Ryan just kind of always were sort of entrepreneurial. So we had like just ideas we used to bounce back and forth, like everybody does, mostly horrible ideas. And we just kind of figured one day, like we kind of picked something. I don't even remember what it was. It was another bad idea, but we were like, wait, okay, cool, let's do this. But then we were like, wait, how are we going to do that? And it's like, oh, I guess we got to hire someone to like program software. And then they were like, then I started thinking like, wait, that's fine, but what if I want to like change the button color or like the text? And it's like, I got to hire somebody to do everything. Like that sounds terrible. Like I'm someone who likes to be in control of things and like have everything a certain way. Like I'm like design and stuff like that. So for me, that was unacceptable. I couldn't they would think I'm a crazy person if I had to call them every time to change a button text or color. So
yeah, exactly. I can get that.
Yeah. So we were both like, all right, let's, a little bit of just being naive. We're like, well, why don't we just try learning how to program? Let's see how crazy this is. Like it's at the time, I'm sure some people can relate to this. If you're not if you don't have a technical background or didn't go to college for this, programming sounds like this like magical power that only these people that make it to the top of the mountain can do. Like they're the most genius people in the world. And a lot of them are very intelligent, but programming is, in my mind, after we started learning it, it's like learning a language. It's like learning Spanish. If you only know English, it's not any harder or easier than that, I'd say. You have to learn syntax and learn how typing this does that on the screen, and it doesn't do that if you type it wrong, and it's like that. So we read like a basic HTML, CSS book, and then we both loved it, got like super excited because I could like change the color of the background of the page, and that was like crazy. And then we're like, whoa, we have magic powers.
You're just a couple of sales bros learning some HTML.
Exactly. Then,
nothing wrong with that.
So like after that book, it was called Head First, by the way. I think they still have a new edition. It was an excellent book, super like really breaks down step by step how to do this if you know absolutely nothing, which is what we were starting at. So after that book, I kind of went more on the design direction. He went more on the back end. Like he was like, this is cool, but like, how do we make a form work? How do we like store something in a database? And I was like, I don't really care about that. I want to like make the button and the font pairing look good. And so like, it was perfect. He started reading a PHP book and I started reading more like design and CSS books. And so we just kind of naturally diverged, and that's how we learned things. And we started consulting on the side real quick, starting with my uncle Larry, who's a lawyer in Florida.
Yes.
Yep.
Everybody needs an Uncle Larry in Florida.
Yep.
To be the first client.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Like, so the idea was you two are hanging out and you're like, we got to start something. And then as you're thinking about ideas to start, you think, well, we have to be able to build it in some way. And so then you just naturally started learning things together, but then eventually you diverged and you did design and Ryan did kind of back-end PHP programming.
Yeah, the logic side. And we started with Larry. We built his site. And then from there, just, we're hustling and looking for jobs on Craigslist, going to networking things, like just getting all of those terrible low-end projects that are out there with terrible clients, because that's what you got to do when you're first starting. It just kind of sucks, but it was fun for us because like we looked at it as being paid to learn. So we were getting paid money to learn things, and it was like, okay, cool. And we were still working at Thomson Reuters, by the way, at this point.
So what was driving the hunger? Was it just like your day job was so boring and bad that you were like, we got to carve out our own little piece of the pie here? Or
yeah, I mean, like with sales, it's a bit of a tangent, but with sales, anyone who's done sales out there, it is exciting. Like, especially at first when there's like, whoa, like you got to like call somebody and like get them to buy something. It's kind of exhilarating, especially when you get a yes and then you get a nice commission check from it. So, but the problem with sales is if you do it long enough, it's basically like a logic tree. Like if I say this, you're going to respond with like one to three different things. And then from there, I have three responses. Then you might object to that one. And then I have another three responses. And then the tree ends. Like it usually ends with either you're going to buy or call you back or
wait,
no.
So you have it quantified down to some like that map?
No, I didn't.
Like,
I never wrote. I did actually write it out to help with training for other people that did the job after me. But yeah. Basically, it really does. And if you're trying to sell anything, there's just a logic tree of yes, no, maybe, and then objections, and then eventually just ends with them moving forward, them saying no, or them saying basically call them back or email them back later.
The patterns are that frequent?
Yeah. It's a pretty decent sized tree, but after a certain amount of calls, I learned all the different ways of you would say no, all the best highest chance response I could give to get you to go to maybe, and then from there get you to yes or no, and then I know that if you said no at that point, there was nothing I could have said that would have changed your mind. It was done.
Okay, so like I'm a purchaser at Exxon, and you call me like cold.
A lot of times we're calling like VPs of tax or like the comptroller, sometimes the CTO. It depends on the size. Sometimes I spoke to CFOs if it was like a medium-sized business. Like you're not just going to call the CFO of like, some like Cisco or something. But
were these cold calls?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Okay. So you get someone on the line and what do you say to me? Like, what's your opening line?
Oh boy, I'm trying to even remember. Well, first, I don't even get to talk to you first. Usually you have to get past the secretary.
Okay.
They all have a secretary, and that person their job is to not let you talk to them because they know that
they're the
busy.
Gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper. And so you got to learn. So I'm trying to remember what the phrase was, but it was something along the lines of, I'm calling in regards to Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. Because that's what our software helped you with, be complying with Sarbanes-Oxley. And when they hear the magic word compliance, now they'd be in trouble if they didn't say something to their boss about compliance. Because, it's about compliance. That's important. So that gets you past the gatekeeper.
Okay, so you make it past my secretary. Now you're talking to me. Now, I'm just imagining if it's me, like let's say that I do have a gatekeeper and you get through to me and then I get the transfer and I realize I'm talking to a salesperson, I'm pissed. So what do you do next? Like what you get me on the line, I go, okay, hey, Justin here. What do you say next?
Oh man, it's been so long. I'm trying to remember. It's been like 8 years since I did this. But yeah, it was something along the lines of like, calling again about Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. Just curious, what are you using right now to stay compliant? So just kind of get them to start talking.
QuickBooks Online, Small Business Edition.
Right. Said no CFO ever of a large company. I mean, they're all paying for something. That's the interesting part about this market is they're all paying for something. Because at that level of a business.
Let's say I have an existing solution and I go, we're fine with our existing solution. is that the end of the call, or what do you do then?
Oh no, then I mean, goes back to that tree. Like, depending on what solution you said, I have a few responses of things I know they don't do well that I know our software does do, and I'll bring those up immediately. Be like, I hear you. I get that you're busy.
Yeah.
But I know that, X doesn't do Y and we do Y really well. Does that matter to you at all? And just kind of gets into like, I know it matters to you. But I'm asking it in a way that isn't like me cramming it down your throat.
Yeah. And okay, here's an interesting thing about that is that I often find when salespeople use those on me, they're fishing and it doesn't hit a nerve at all. Like usually I'm just like, no, it doesn't matter. It's like, but had you identified like these are just open exposed nerves that everybody, like who identified that? Was that you as a salesperson, or is that somebody ahead of you that's tracking patterns and going, oh, wait a second, we know for sure that if you say these words, it's going to trigger a response.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if a salesperson had done something like that to you and it didn't hit a nerve, they're not very good, and they didn't know what to say. And that, like, it's not just we do this and the other person doesn't. It's we do this and we know that's important to a company like you. And so how do you you're experiencing that? Pain. Well, yeah, it's some of it is our previous bosses would kind of give us tips and hints, and part of it's trial and error, like learning. After, if you get a client and you start implementing our software and they're like, oh, you guys do this thing so much better than our last solution. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Good to know. And then I make a note. And then for the next person I talk to, I can bring that up.
Yeah. Sales is one of those interesting things that if you happen to get a hold of somebody who's hungry, then, they're thankful you called, right? Like today I've been calling around because I'm in Canada, but I get paid, almost all of my payments come in as USD, US dollars, and which is great. That's exactly what I want. The problem is I can lose literally hundreds of dollars a month if I'm not converting those USD to Canadian efficiently. And it's tricky because there's lots of personal banking products. This is super boring to people. Anyway, it's tricky. The point is like and every person I talk to, like that I call, doesn't know what I'm talking about. Like I have to go through a whole thing. If somebody called me that clearly knew what they were talking about and wasn't a jackass, I would be like overjoyed. But that just seems like, I think a lot of people, even in SaaS, struggle with this. How do you observe a repeatable pattern of pain or friction or like an exposed nerve, and then find those people in an efficient way? And you know what I mean? Like, have you been able to take any of that sales stuff over to member space?
Yeah. I'd say the main thing, like we don't do like one-on-one sales like that anymore, because you only would do that generally is if you're you're selling a really expensive piece of software, and our software is not super expensive. So, but what we did take over is the level of follow-up and communication that you need when you're selling at the enterprise level, which is really good email follow-up, being really clear about things, scheduling meetings, all those little details. Like no ball ever gets dropped. And by both me and Ryan having that experience and bringing that at first into consulting, especially for those low-end projects, it would blow people out of the water, our level of communication. Because, I think developers and tech companies in general kind of get a bad rep for having like bad communication and like not following up and just disappearing. We hear that all the time. And so our approach was like, we were treating you as if you were like, $1 million enterprise project I was trying to close, even though you paid us $500 for a website. And so that blew people out of the water in terms of like loving us, referring us to other people, just being really happy in general.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how like different contexts, because before I got into tech, I was working in the nonprofit industry, and nonprofit workers work their asses off. They work like 100 times harder than anybody else. And I remember getting this job at this startup, and one of my coworkers after the first week pulled me aside and said, dude, you have to slow down. Like in some ways, you're making us look bad. Like, and I felt like my whole life had just switched to easy mode. Like it was just a completely different context. Like it was so strange. And so you had that experience, like sales at the enterprise level, and the way you experienced it was kind of at this level of communication, this level of follow up. And then you bring that into, doing websites for people. And it's like, okay, we're really killing it here. Like the competition isn't even close. Yeah, that's hilarious.
And then that naturally, we brought that to member space in terms of like how to provide support for people, right? Because it's just like following up again if they didn't follow up, just to be like, hey, was everything clear in that last message? Hopping on the call to talk to people. Just again, treating everybody like they're paying you $1 million doesn't, even if they're not, it really makes a difference in terms of how their perceived value, and then their loyalty and their ability to kind of roll with punches if you have bugs or issues or whatever down the line.
Yeah, I like that. So, I mean, the other question that we get all the time on this show is people are looking for an idea. How did the idea for MemberSpace come about?
Yeah, so I got to give Amy Hoy credit here with the Sales Safari concept. I'm sure you're aware of it, but for people that aren't, just Google Amy Hoy 30 by 500. She's got like a whole, I guess it's like a class or boot camp of sorts you can buy.
Yeah.
But I basically... That? No, that was cheap. I reverse engineered essentially from her blog post where she would allude to the concepts and kind of give general ideas. But the quick summary is with the Sales Safari, instead of trying to come up with idea, instead you should look at watering holes where people are already talking about things, complaining about problems. So things like public forums, review sites, feature like feature boards where you like click to move that feature higher up. I can't think of the phrase for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that kind of a thing where like people are already communicating and talking about what they want, what's not working. So we did that in Squarespace when we were just building websites on Squarespace. I went to their forum and it was like, you could view by topic, and I sorted by most viewed topic, and it was like 100,000 views for how do I add memberships to Squarespace? And we're just like, oh boy. We had been asked this by a few of our customers. And so I just kind of started reading through every single response, which is what Amy says to do. Like, this is the boring work that other people aren't going to do, but you do, so you can really get a really rich set of data without having to go out and find those people. They're already talking. They're right there. And so I read through every comment in terms of what people liked, didn't like about existing solutions, pricing, features, blah, blah, blah. And you document all this, right? You have a nice Excel sheet or whatever that you're keeping track of all this data. And that's how we came up with one. Clearly there was a need. There was like the solutions out there were terrible and people hated them, and they were still buying it because there was no one else. There was nothing else. So we're like, okay, there's obviously a market here of people that are willing to pay. I don't have to guess. I know that for a fact. It's right. There's data right there in front of me, and that validates it for you. And so then we also use that to shape, okay, what's actually the MVP here? And so we launched something with the most basic possible feature set for free to the forum users by basically just replying to the thread and some Facebook groups. And then we got initial traction with free, got to 100 free people pretty quick. Because if it's a market where people are willing to pay for something, you can get 100 free people pretty quick already to just beta test something. And then from there, you just start iterating.
Was the idea of launching it free because you just felt like it wasn't enough to charge people for, or?
It's actually, it's funnier than that. So like we were so MVP that we couldn't bill people to use MemberSpace yet.
Okay.
Because we actually used MemberSpace to run MemberSpace. So
gotcha.
We were like, well, if we can't charge people, if our customers can't charge people, then neither can we. So It's like, okay, we're all in this together.
And was there other competitors at this point?
There were, but competitor is a pretty generous term. It's probably one developer guy, in a basement somewhere who's got some like crappy product he wrote that doesn't really do much support. Gotcha.
And like Memberful was already around, but they didn't do Squarespace.
Right. And Memberful is more of like for WordPress. Like, yeah, they don't do Squarespace. And yeah, like the idea I don't know if we really made it clear before, but what MemberSpace does is it allows you to turn any part of your website into members only with just like a few clicks. So you don't need to be technical. You don't need a plugin. It just bolts right into your existing website, Squarespace, Webflow, whatever. and just turns any page or section into members only.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, you were probably also hitting this kind of developing wave of interest at that time of, there's more people self-publishing, there's more people building these quote unquote lifestyle businesses. The make money online crowd is starting to
coaching.
really get fired up, and coaching. And did you have a sense of that? Like, do you have a sense of like, whoa, like there is this kind of growing wave of interest, or did you feel like you were too ahead of it, or maybe just there at the right time? How did you feel like you kind of approached all that stuff, your timing?
To be honest, we didn't even realize we were in a wave, which we definitely are in, but we didn't quite realize it. All I knew for sure was that there are 100,000 people who are interested in this topic, at least from Squarespace.
100. That's all. Sorry, how many?
There was 100,000 people in that forum, that forum post that I was talking about, where they talk about memberships. There was 100,000 views to that topic.
I must have missed that. There's 100,000 views. Wow. Okay, so you.
That's all I knew, is that there was something going on there.
Pretty clear signal, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because, I've been using this metaphor of surfing. And when people are thinking about, like, how do I find an idea, right? You're basically, what you're looking for is a good wave. And to me, the wave is market demand. The more you kind of like observe folks like you and other people who have started businesses, and you dig into the story, you realize that there is a general shape to demand. Like, you can start to see it. And one of those shapes is like, where has demand been demonstrated? And so, like, a forum post that has 100,000 views, that's a pretty good indicator. Like, if you're sitting in the water on your surfboard, that maybe that's worth paddling over and investigating that wave, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you also had the benefit of initially launching on this platform, Squarespace, that had massive traction, right? Like, at the time, they're probably still the leaders in that space, right?
Yeah.
Aside from WordPress.
We had done a lot of consulting too. Like, we had a lot of Squarespace specific experience. Like, we were one of the top agencies, I think, in terms of volume in the world. And we had built over 400 Squarespace sites.
Oh, wow.
So like, we had a lot of so we were known in that community as well. So like, we had that going for us. We weren't just coming out of the blue. And
so it wasn't enough that you had a few people requesting it in your consulting practice. Like, that didn't kind of trigger any thoughts? It was like, man, not really.
No, because I mean, I think our consulting practice, if you like, of all the people that use Squarespace, what percentage care about memberships is maybe 10% tops. So from our consulting practice, if you're not talking about a big number, 10% of a small number, it didn't really register. It's like, oh yeah, this is this thing we hear about sometimes, but but when it's brought to the context of all of Squarespace, 100,000 views of a topic, now it's like, oh, this is actually a big sub-market within Squarespace.
Yeah. I still think there's part of that experience that's instructive, because the what led you to the Squarespace forums was the fact that you were already kind of sitting in the Squarespace waters,
Yep.
Right? And like, I often advise people, like, if you don't have any good ideas, start with consulting, because it will at least lead you to industries and product categories that, like, you might have an understanding. I mean, most people have like kind of an understanding of how Squarespace works and that people use it. But until you're in it, until you're like getting those phone calls every day, until you're going through the forums all the time to find answers to your own problems, until you're like really in that ecosystem and in it for a while. Like, how long were you consulting for before you started Memberful?
Memberspace.
Memberspace.
Yeah, sorry, it's okay. Everyone's uses the word member now in their software. Let's see. We had been doing Squarespace sites since, I want to say, 2012, and Memberspace was 2015. So like 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah. See, that's a fair amount of time to be just swimming around, earning money, relating to those clients. And the clients, I'm guessing, are the same people, right? The people who are buying Squarespace sites from your agency those are the same. I mean, you said it might be only 10% of your business before, but the target market is still Squarespace site owners, at least initially.
Right, which can be extrapolated to small business owners for the most part, or people just starting a business.
Okay, so you decide to start MemberSpace, and you put out this MVP. You get 100 free people. So what happened after that? How did you figure it out?
Yes, I mean, this is kind of the classic. You're just sort of scrambling to build the features that people are requesting the most. And I think at that stage of a, it's not even a business yet because we're not charging people, but at that stage of a thing, you pretty quickly hear what's the most common request. Like right away, people are like, this is cool, but I want to be able to charge people for access. Like essentially what we were was like a gate where you have to enter in your email address and then you get access to a page. That's all we were doing.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of people, that's actually all they needed. That core thing. But then the very obvious next feature was you need to be able to charge people, but that's a bigger feature. To build it out with Stripe and all that, it's not trivial. So there are other sub things that people wanted to, like, MailChimp integration, or can I export my list of members? So like you vary, and then instead of just doing whatever anyone asked, you just kind of let it bubble for a little bit, and then you can just quickly tell what to build next. And that's easy. And that's all very clear, I think, up to a point. And maybe you're at that point now with Transistor, but you get to the point where it's like, okay, all the major big things are done for the most part. It's like the medium size bits and small bits that we have to it's really hard to pick what to do next.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if we have time, because I want to get past your early stage stuff, but that would be good to talk about. It's just the challenge of, because in some ways you are similar. You probably don't have as many competitors as we do, but you have competitors that have similar feature sets. And I think one thing that's been challenging for us now is initially we were, and you actually had this too, initially you're just the best option because you're the newest, you're the most well thought out. Everything else is like maybe really old and crusty or just hasn't been updated in a while. So just being the fresh face is helpful on its own. But eventually, that wears off, and then there's new competitors coming on, and it's, figuring out, okay, and we're all like using the same tech stack. We're all, there's everybody's, it's so trivial for our competitors to look and see what graphing library we're using and just implement that in their own app. How have you and Ryan dealt with that so far? Yeah,
I mean, it's something we're still dealing with. I don't have a good answer for it, really. The thing I've read the most is, focus on your customer, not on your competitors, right? I think we've all heard that. It's easier said than done, but it's, why would people pick you? Like there's like, for us, you said that we don't have that many competitors compared to you, but I'd say we have a lot of like tangentially related competitors, like Teachable, for example, or, Podia or Gumroad. Like there's all these anyone who wants to sell something online is kind of a competitor, which makes our market enormous. And it means that, so it's like, we're a niche within a niche. It's like, okay, if you want to keep people on your website the entire time and have full control over the design, that's what MemberSpace is for. But there's all these little things right around there that are close. So for us, it's like, how do we stay in our lane and stick to the lane and not try to expand and be more like a Teachable and more, more like X. And that's hard because people keep telling you, why don't you do this though? That's what we want. But it's like, you want that, but not everyone else wants that.
Yes.
And that's it. Yeah. So it's, focusing on your customer. Yes, that's an easy thing to say, but it's like, well, but what does that mean exactly? And where are the edges of that?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's been helpful, is it just still you and Ryan, or do you have some employees now too?
Yeah, I'd say so. We have 3 full-time support people, me, Ryan, and then we have a bunch of developers, and then we have a couple other contractors as well.
Okay, wow. When you say a bunch of developers, you mean like contract developers?
Yeah, they're an agency that we contract 4 of their people full-time for us. Yeah. So we have 10 full-time folks all in.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big, that's a big team. I think one thing that's been helpful for John and I, at least right now, and obviously this could change, but we just do not desire to really grow the team. Like we don't really. And so when people request things, sometimes it feels like our math as founders is off when like a customer comes in and goes, well, if you offered this, I would sign up, or all the people in my industry would sign up. But whenever I've like gone down those paths and like looked into it, I'm like, that just seems like so much additional stuff that I'm adding and way more risk. And so, one thing that's been helpful, I think for us, at least, again, this could change. We just might be naive, but going, here's the type of customers that these type of customers just sign up and enjoy the product. And we only hear from them when we onboard them. And after that, we don't hear from them. They're just happy to use the product. But then there's another type of customer that looks and smells like enterprise customers. And it's like, these folks are just so difficult. And people keep telling me, well, no, they're worth it once you get them online. But, if I need to have a lawyer on retainer for every deal, and I need to have a person that can fill out RFPs and security questionnaires, and, it's like, man, that just doesn't feel right. But it is challenging figuring out what is staying in your lane.
There's that. And there's also like, Paul Jarvis comes to mind with a company of one mindset of like, well, how big do you want to be? Because like, if you want to be a, $50 million a year business, then you can't just be like a niche within a niche. Like that's not how that would work. And if you don't want to be that, then you have to be okay with a lot of people complaining all the time because you're a niche within a niche.
Yes.
At least, and it's tricky. It's hard to actually accept that. It's something I'm trying to figure out too. Is like what's enough? Like what's the actual end goal here, and what's the boundaries of our lane of what we want to stay in? And I think everyone has kind of figured that out themselves. Like Paul Jarvis's Fathom Analytics, I think, kind of comes to mind because if anyone's used that, it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. Not a ton of features, but they're very clear with their messaging. It's like, if you care about privacy, you use Fathom Analytics. And it's like people aren't using Fathom Analytics because it's some powerhouse analytics tool, right? And they know that. And I bet you the majority of people that do analytics don't really care that much about privacy. But there's some subset that really do, and that's their people. And, I would assume they're going to stick to that. And that means they're not going to be a giant analytics company, probably. I mean, maybe you can look back at this in 5 years and see how wrong I am, but maybe that's okay though.
But it's interesting asking like, what is the end kind of outcome you want? And that evolves obviously, but I'm just like, I'm always thinking like, to what end? Like, we could take investment, but to what end? We could get acquired, but to what end? We could try to grow really, really fast and add all these enterprise features, but to what end? Because a lot of those just seem like right now I'm getting paid well and I'm comfortable. There's nothing on my calendar. This is the only this year is the first thing that should have been on my calendar, but it was like we did this conversation last minute, and so thinking like it seems like sometimes people have this goal of freedom or more time with their family or I don't know what it is, and we just keep adding all of these requirements or prerequisites or complexities, layers of complexity, hoping that we'll get there. And I'm just wondering, have you, for you personally, like, what is your end? Because I mean, your team's already 10 people, and you took investment from Earnest, right?
Yeah, we took a bit of money from them, and we didn't even need the money. Like we were profitable before them. We were cash flow positive. We didn't need the money. It was just kind of need to take some to get investment.
Yeah.
We did it more for the mentorship network and just the community that it opens it up to. Because like me and Ryan have been to MicroConf, but like we didn't have a great like network. Like you're kind of the polar opposite. You have a great network of people in the software world and people that have done and started large companies, and we didn't have that. So we were like, this is kind of a way to kind of go around the back and like get into like a big network of like the software world. And so that was, and get advice.
But why, like, okay, can we just stay on there for a bit? Because, so let's say you take $100,000 from Earnest, and you might've taken more or less, I don't know, but let's say you take 100. To me, that's like, the assumption is that you're going to pay that back at some multiple, right? Mm-hmm. It just seems expensive just to play devil's advocate to get just to get the network. Like, that just seems like, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's like $300,000 or $500,000 or whatever you end up paying is worth it. But it just seems like, wow, that's expensive just to get the network and membership, the mentorship.
Yeah. So let's just say hypothetically it was $100,000, and let's just say hypothetically we have to pay back $400,000, right? So it's a 300 net is basically the payment for the access, right? Let's just pretend that those are the numbers.
Yeah.
That does sound expensive on the face of it. Once, if you get to the point where your business is generating, $1 million, $2 million, $300,000 is still a lot of money, but you could do that maybe in a quarter in terms of revenue. Now, and then if you also get to where it's like, okay, well, by having that mentorship network, if they, for example, help you with your pricing page or help you with your plan tiers, or introduce you to a new head of marketing, and that person or that idea, has a significant change in trial to conversion rate, right? Then you multiply that over 2-3 years of people visiting your website, you're talking about it, $300,000 I made well over $1 million in that exchange. So I was like, sure, I'll take that deal every day. So it depends on what scale you're operating at. Yeah.
It's just the hard part is you can't split test life. No. So it's hard to know how much you can attribute to. I mean, I could understand it. Like there was a time at the beginning of Transistor where it was like, I was suffering because we weren't, we were at 5K MRR, and I'm pouring all my time and energy into this thing. And, I'm like, I gotta have some money to live on. Right. But once you get to a certain scale, I was like, I don't know. And again, maybe it is like, you're right. Maybe it is a good trade. Like if on the whole, all of the cohort, like all of the Earnest Capital cohorts or any of these other funds too, like if the cohorts kind of significantly outperform their peers, then you would say, okay, well, that makes sense, right?
And that's just the money side of it. There's other elements. There's like you were saying, the mental side of it. It's like, okay, so now instead of me and Ryan having to figure out everything, now we can lean on a group of experienced software entrepreneurs to give us guidance. It's like, hey, how do you think about feature prioritization? Should we be thinking about this part of DevOps? Like, what do you do? Like that kind of stuff is like, I don't know if you can put a price on that to like, for example, we got to talk with, Jason Fried about our pricing page. Like I got to have a video call with Jason Fried. He looked at our pricing page and told us what to change. And it made an enormous difference in our conversion rate. And it's like, that kind of thing is hard to put a price on how much that was worth. Natalie Nagel from WildBit is a mentor of me and Ryan's. Like I'm in Philadelphia, and so is she. So like me and Ryan went to physically meet them in their office and like talk about our business for half a day, and then give us advice on how to like handle people and to think about growth. And like, again, how much is that worth? I don't know, but like, for me, it's mentally reassuring to know it's like I have like these giants I can lean on to, give me help when I don't know what to do, instead of reading their blog posts or listening to their podcasts, which are useful. But a lot of that is signal. And I wanted more of the noise. So I could actually, because I'm reading all the most of the mentors in earnest, I already was following their stuff, but now I can like go and ask them context specific questions. And like that to me is invaluable.
Yeah, I could see that. It's still, I don't know if it's just a mental hurdle, like, and also because, I mean, one of the old kind of bullshit things that VCs would say is like, go with me, kid, and I'll like take you under my wing and, show you a thing or two. And as time has passed and I've looked at a lot of those people that were saying those things, I'm like, that was bullshit. Like you're not, there's no, the advice. And I've consulted for startups and other things, and I've been in part of those. Sometimes they'll have a meeting where they're like, we're bringing in one of our investors or one of our board members. And it just was not helpful looking back on it. I'm still open to the idea that it could be different and that could be better. So you say it's already helped you folks, like you're seeing actual like quantitative results.
Yeah, quantitative and qualitative. Like I said, there's the emotional side of it, and then there's the financial side of it. And the emotional side of it was why we did it more than the financial side. It was just, I don't know I've never run a large software company. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just reading blog posts and trying to figure it out from there and trying to be good to our customers. But once that keeps scaling up, it's like, I don't want to make some really stupid mistake and then lose all this stuff this asset that I've built up. I don't want to screw it up. And so, so maybe it's partly a fear-based thing, but it's for me to know that I have these people in my corner that can help me with anything that comes up and give me sage advice, not just like some random person on the street that I'm asking. Like, these people know what they're doing. To me, I that feels good. It's like I always have like a home base I can go to ask questions and feel safe,
Yeah, no, I totally get it. The one thing emotionally that I think has been surprising for John and I is, we got here and so many people, want to get here, and I've wanted to get here for a long time. And then you get there and there's a little bit of a sense of ennui, a feeling of listlessness and dissatisfaction arising from a lack of occupation or excitement. How do you say? Because in French it's ennui. But anyway, do you know what I'm saying? Like there's this feeling of, okay, we're here, and the excitement you had when you're kind of building up to, this thing paying your bills, and then now we've gone way past it. It's doing well. Have you and Ryan experienced that, and how did you overcome it?
So like it kind of dovetails with burnout. It's a little bit, I'd say they're at least cousins to each other. I mean, for sure we experienced some burnout type stuff when we were doing consulting, and because we were just kind of scrambling and always working as much as we could to make, to try to grow that fledgling thing. But now that we're a member space, we're paid a nice salary. We have a full-time team. We give them health benefits. Like, things are good. There's no problem right now. We're growing. But it's like, again, it's to what end? What is the goal? What are we trying to get to? Otherwise, you're just kind of running and then constantly running. And then like, why am I still running? Where am I going exactly? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And there is a tension between, on one hand, it's like, okay, we got here. Why don't we just relax for a bit or put our focus elsewhere, right? Like John could start baking sourdough bread, which he's super interested in, and I'm like staying up till 3 a.m. reading climate change white papers.
That sounds
healthy. So we could invest ourselves in other things, and certainly we have the margin to do that. Or we could invest ourselves, we could just say, well, no, let's set some new goals for the business and then like invest ourselves in that. And then there's the idea of also especially for like, I think John feels this way too, but for me, it's like, I never want to succumb to that ennui, right? Like, I don't want to succumb to that feeling of listlessness and dissatisfaction. I'm always kind of like firing myself up every day going, no, like we got to stay on it, because we've all seen businesses where the founders kind of like drifted away and then the business wasn't as good. And so there's all these kind of, different tensions in there. And like for you, do you have a new goal? Like, are you trying to get to $5 million a year in revenue, or like what's driving you professionally now?
Yeah. I mean, we got to the MRR that we wanted to get to, but we don't want to grow indefinitely. Like I don't want to be like a $50 million a year business. That sounds like a nightmare. But what's driving me now is like we have real businesses and real people, using our platform and making a living. Some of them, it's their full-time living is through our platform. And so it's like I have a responsibility now to maintain this asset that we built and make it better for them. Not so that I can keep growing our revenue, but because it's like, I mean, you kind of like set up shop. You can't just like not maintain it. That's not, I think, morally okay. So, but I think it's important to, as with everything, have balance. So I don't think it needs to be all or nothing. Like either we're like, let the business autopilot or be 100% sprinting. Like, I think there's a very healthy area where it's like you put in a solid 40 hours a week and you go do other things. You do hobbies, you do whatever. You have hard cutoffs to when you stop working. You take, month-long vacations to have like a serious amount of time away. Things like that, where it's like mini full breaks. But then you come back to the shop that you set up because you have people that are relying on you. And I think that's important. And that keeps me motivated, at least.
Yeah. So for you, it's just the idea of like, we've created this thing. There's people using it. We have staff. That's enough to get you out of bed every day. Because there's some folks, it's like they get real fired up about just increasing revenue. Like they just want to. So there's like, okay, well, we hit 1 million ARR and now we just got to keep going, right? And for me, it's like, I mean, maybe I could get fired up about that, but like I relaxed a ton. Once I was getting paid well, I was like, the making more revenue was not super interesting to me. And so, but I do get really fired up about podcasting and helping people launch shows. And like, I still really love that stuff. But yeah, I'm always kind of thinking like, wow, it's funny. Like when you get to the place that you wanted to be, there's still got to be something else ahead of you that you're going after. And, I can see how that can be dangerous. Like you can like get there and then just kind of slowly, like I said, just drift away or just kind of like succumb to this feeling. And, I'm trying to preempt that in some way.
Yeah, I think focusing on service to other people is one of the antidotes to that. The goal is not to get revenue to a certain point. Like that is diminishing returns. And I can tell you, as somebody who made a healthy salary when we were doing enterprise sales, that also is very much diminishing returns. I'm not. It was good. It was a good lesson I learned. I'm not motivated by money. Like I didn't care that my bonus check was, whatever, more than the last year. It didn't matter. It's like, I have enough money. It's not a problem. So that I know already, revenue doesn't drive me. And same with Ryan. So that was helpful with doing member space. Cause it's like, we know that just becoming some giant company isn't the end all be all. So for us, at least for me, it's the service to other people to like, I want to help people start a business and help them make it sustainable. And so like that to me is important. And then also we have people that work for us who rely on us as a job, for healthcare and salary. And it's like, that's important to me. I want to keep them happy and all that, and that's enough for me. That's enough just to maintain that.
I like that a lot because it feels like I do have this feeling of having more margin. One thing about having more margin is I think it does free us up to think about other people. Like when you're in that desperation cycle of I just need to make enough to pay my mortgage and feed the family and all that stuff. That's very like self-focused, and it's I think a lot of in the beginning, every entrepreneur is kind of there. They're just like trying to make enough money to like meet their basic needs. And the weird thing, it's like ironic, is that it's almost like a switch gets flipped. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, but now we've got tons of money. Like now we've got like more than enough. And that means we've got more time, and like you've got less cognitive load. And so with this new margin, what do you choose to do with that? And like being other focused feels like a good place to start. Just like instead of just hoarding all this margin, which is not super fun, we can like go out and like actually use that margin to help other people.
Yeah, exactly. And that for me keeps me going.
Cool. Well, this was good. I feel like it was nice to talk to someone who's like ahead of us. You know, you've been doing this for a while, but you're not so big that you're, 100 kilometers down the road or whatever. Yeah. So this is great. Folks that everyone who's listening right now should go and tweet you at Ward Sandler on Twitter. Sandler, like Adam Sandler. And then you folks are memberspace.com.
Yep.
Did you have memberspace.com from the beginning?
No. It was my memberspace. And we got the Twitter handle memberspace from you, Justin, if you recall.
Tell people that story, because that's hilarious to me.
Yeah. So
what is it from your perspective?
If I recall correctly, we were looking on Twitter for the handle at memberspace, and it was taken. It didn't say by who. And so I DM'd the account and asked if hey, are you still using this or interested in selling it? And it just so happened to be owned by Justin Jackson, of all people on the internet. Because I guess you had some side project maybe you had thought of with it.
I mean, I was thinking about starting so many things. And so, yeah, I probably registered it at some point, and I had forgotten about it, I think. And so I was like, oh, because I'd met you already. And so then I was like, oh, your thing is MemberSpace? What the? Okay, yeah, sure. You can have it.
That was awesome.
That kind of serendipity. That's amazing. Yeah, folks, go check out MemberSpace. Thanks for being here, Ward. You want to stick around while I read out these Patreons?
Sure.
You're number 3. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. Mason Hensley, Boria Solar, Ward Sandler. Thanks for being here. Eric Lima, James Sowers, Travis Fisher, Matt Buckley, Russell Brown, Evander Sassy. Yeah. Preduma Schembecker, Noah Prail, Robert Simplicio, Colin Gray, Josh Smith, Ivan Kirkovic, Brian Ray, Shane Smith, Austin Lovelace, Simon Bennett, Michael Sitver, Paul Jarvis, and Jack Ellis. We mentioned them earlier. Dan Buddha, that's John's brother. Darby Frey, Samori Augusto, Dave Young, Brad from Canada, Sammy Schukert, Mike Walker, Adam Duvander, Dave Junta. That was amazing. Kyle Fox from GetRewardful.com. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.